Thanks very much, and appreciate the testimony here today. Mr. Aquilino, Mr. Brock had asked a question about the Prime Minister having, quote, knowingly influenced former Justice Minister and Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould, and that term knowingly. And it's my understanding that in civil and criminal law, it's a fairly low threshold, but it is interpreted the same. And I'm just wanting, if I could, Mr. Aquilino, your interpretation of that threshold and whether or not that threshold was in fact met, and your interpretation of the events that took place related to that question around him having knowingly influenced.
Sure. So when you apply the facts of what transpired here to the wording of the offense, so 139 sub 2, you have to apply the knowingly standard to the act of obstructing, perverting, or defeating the course of justice. And what the case law says that it takes more than a mere moral lapse or an ethical lapse of judgment. It takes something, an additional step, so a corrupt intent, a criminal intent. And this is where we had difficulty in establishing that intent.
So when it comes to the establishment of that intent, at the time, and I was not elected at the time when I followed this, both the breaking story in the Globe and Mail and what transpired, the damning testimony that Jody Wilson-Raybould had brought forward at committee, and just the whole, it was extraordinary to watch. I was very troubled at the time how narrow the constraints were on the evidence that could be obtained both by the office of the Ethics Commissioner, but also in light of that to the Justice Committee and presumably the impacts that had in relation to the RCMP being able to get to the bottom of exactly what you've referred to about knowing what that intent is. So could having more evidence, understanding what the bigger context is, and certainly you don't know what you don't know, but if there was more information available, could that have influenced and led to you, the RCMP, and others coming to a different conclusion? Mr. Dion?
Purely speculative. So it's impossible to answer your question. Of course it could, or maybe it could have, I don't know.
So it could have, and I think that's the question. Why were the constraints so tight? And certainly that's an outstanding question that remains, and an incredible disappointment that there was not a willingness for the government to be more transparent, and it leads one to ask the question about what is there to hide. Now, I do want to ask another question, because yesterday the Liberals tabled a amendment to the Canada Elections Act. And in that, on page 2, there's a very interesting change to the election date. And as the public, I'm sure, is very aware, MPs qualify for a pension after 6 years of service. The election was planned to be held on October 20th of 2025. That would have been 1 day short for MPs elected in 2019 to qualify for their pension. And while Conservatives are calling for an election immediately, I'm just wondering if that delay in the page 2 of this act, if that would be a conflict of interest for MPs to basically vote on something that would be the difference between them either qualifying or not qualifying for their pension.
Very, very quick response on that, please. Very quick.
You as MPs have the power, make the rules for yourself, including your code of conduct, and also when elections are held, etc. That's not a conflict of interest. It's something that you are charged. It's a duty. One would expect you do it in the public interest and not in your personal interest.
Thank you.
But
Would there be a
that's enough time.
Could there be a perceived conflict in that?
No, Mr. Kirk, I'm sorry, I'm over time.